In this unit, we will learn how to adjust the fill and the stroke of our shapes. There are multiple ways and techniques in Adobe Illustrator that you can use in order to change the colors of your shapes. So follow me. Let's start with the most common one, which is just click on the object that you want to recolor, and then you see here on the left hand side that you have some icons showing you the current fill and the stroke. If I double click on the fill color, it pops me up the color picker. I can change the shades of yellow by moving the color picker around the graph, and you can see here the preview of my previous color and the new one that I selected. I can also switch to a totally different color and not just the shades of yellow just by moving these handles here around and select different colors from the shades. You can also adjust them manually by using the RGB or the HSB colors or CMYK. What I usually use is RGB or CMYK colors, or the hex code, which refers to web design and web applications. You can adjust the percentages of the colors, so if you are working on an CMYK file, I would suggest to work also with CMYK values in your colors. If your file is RGB, then it's perhaps more useful to use the full range of RGB colors, so work with these percentages here. In order to check on what color mode you're working, you can just look at the top of your document here where it says RGB or CMYK correspondingly. Once you select the color that you want to apply, you just press OK and the color will be applied to your shape. There are a few more things going on here. First of all, there is the stroke option. Currently you see that it's crossed with this red line, which means that we don't have any stroke color at all. In order to add some, I just click on that, so I bring it at front of my fill, which means that I'm currently working on the stroke, and I can double click to get the color picker and select the stroke color. You see that I have now a stroke on my shape. I can quickly also, with this little arrow here, switch the order of them, so swap the fill with the stroke color. I can also make my colors just black and white by clicking on this icon here, so the default fill and stroke, and I can swap them again around if I want to. Or I can also remove again the stroke just by pressing None. Or if I click firstly on the fill, so I bring it at front, that is now the color that I'm editing, I can click again None and remove it. And even swap the None with a stroke color. This is how this little panel here allows you to do quite a lot of the stuff that you actually want to achieve. Another panel that you can use is the color panel. If you don't see it here on the side, feel free to navigate through Window and then select Color. As you can see here, you have the main colors, transparent, none, black and white. So if I just click on that, you see that it applies it to my shape. Or I can also select from the spectrum. Just by clicking anywhere, it applies the color to my composition. What happens now if I want to be a bit more precise on the color that I'm picking? What you can do is scale a bit up this panel and be able to select the color that you want to apply to your composition. If you now want to see the values of your colors and further information, you can go on the three little lines here at the top and select Show Options. And now you see that I have still my bar with the spectrum and the main colors, but I do have also this part here, which allows me to see the fill and the stroke and adjust the CMYK colors with the handles. I can swap again fill and stroke. I can go back to just black and white. Since I'm working on an RGB color mode on this file, why should I use CMYK colors and narrow down my options? In order to switch, you click again on the three little lines. You can select the corresponding one, so grayscale, RGB, HSB, or web save. And now I have the new handles that they represent the colors of red, green, and blue corresponding to RGB colors, as well as the hex number, which is right here. If you go on this 3 lines again, you have some options. So if you want to invert your color, you just click invert. So instead of yellow, it's gonna create this time blue. But let's go to the basic color so you can see. Instead of white, if you invert it, you will get black color. You also have what we call complement colors. The complement color for green is the magenta. You can quickly switch through this panel and invert either your color or find the complement color. Once you're happy with this combination, you can go ahead and select any other kind of shape and carry on editing it. You can amend the color on multiple objects at the same time. This is grouped, so I'm going to go ahead firstly and ungroup it. Select these 2 black shapes. I can go ahead and switch their color at the same time. Or even shapes that they have different colors, even if it looks like a little question mark, I can select and it's gonna swap them at the same time, both of them. Another feature that I want to talk to you about are the strokes. We already talked about strokes from this little panel here, so stroke and fill, but there are more things that you can do with a stroke. Firstly, you can adjust the thickness of it. From the properties panel here at the top, you can either make it thinner or thicker, however you like. And you can define also the variable width of your line. Just by clicking here, you can define if you want, for example, to be on the one side, nice and thick, and then on the other, thin, or if it's going to be thick just in the middle. So you can select how you want your line to be in terms of style. Also, you can define the different brushes by clicking on the arrow next to the initial brush, which is the basic. You can select from the existing ones here, or you can access more by using this icon of the 3 little books, which allows you to access the brush library. So I'm gonna go ahead, for example, and select arrows. And I'm gonna have a pop-up panel which has different kind of arrows. If I want to quickly access more brushes, I just click on the 3 books and it allows me to quickly access the rest of the brushes. There are a few more options that you can do with your stroke that you can either access by clicking on the stroke word here and define your weight as we already talked about, or some different kind of assets. What I personally prefer is to use the corresponding panel here on the right side, which again, if you cannot locate it, click the window and select stroke from the drop-down menu. As you can see, you only initially see the weight. In order to access the rest of the options, click on the 3 little lines and you select Show Options. The first option defines how the edges of your path are going to look like. So you can currently see that the last anchor point is aligned with the edge of the path. If I'm going to click on that last icon here, you will see that it works like a little square around that point instead. Or the middle one makes the edges nice and round. On the second line, we have some options about the corners. We have the option of having nice and middle corners or round ones. Or the other is the bevel corners. On the next line here, you have some options of how to align your stroke, which applies to paths that they are closed, not open paths. So I'm going to go ahead and select the shape. You will notice that the line of the selection, so where our points are, is in the middle of the stroke. But I can also push it on the outside, so the stroke goes all within our points within our selection, or correspondingly on the outside. So it aligns either the stroke inside your shape or outside. One more thing is about having some dashed lines. So in order to do that, you have to enable the dashed line option. You can define the length of the dash itself, as well as the gap between the dashes. And if you don't want them to be equal, you can go ahead and change them and say the next dash is going to be 5, and then the next is going to have 10 points gap, and so on, to make an unequal dashed line. What you can also do is to add some arrowheads. Have some arrows for the edges of your line. And you can also have an arrow or an edge to close your shape in the end. From the scale just underneath, I can define how big or how small is this arrowhead going to be. You can lengthen and unlengthen the proportions of the two arrowheads, so the shape that we placed in the beginning and in the end of the path, by clicking on that icon here. And you can swap the start and the end arrowheads with this icon next to the arrowheads. The profile refers back to the profile that we talked about, so the type of our line. The dashed line and the arrowheads can also be applied to the other shapes, so it's not just on a straight line, it can be to a wobbly line, for example, like this one here. So you can already see how from a simple line, a simple stroke, you can actually create so many different kind of styles, such as like this dashed line here with the arrows, or this nice and wobbly arrow, and so on. It is worth having a look and exploring all these options so you can find the most convenient one for your workflow. So let's move on to the next unit, where I will show you how to cut and merge objects.